Can you talk a little louder?
I can. That's probably my failing for podcasts is I have quiet voice.
Oh, you're fine now.
How about now?
That's too much.
Okay.
Are you hungry? If not, you will be. I'm Andrew Thien, and this is Beat Check, a new podcast from the Oregonian. Up next, a conversation with our food critic about his favorite new restaurants in town and how he compiled his much-anticipated list. But first, allow me to introduce myself and this new podcast. I cover transportation issues for the Oregonian and Oregon Live, but I started my journalism career on the radio back in 2006. Let's see if I remember how to do this.
Okay, so probably sit like this and keep talking to Andrew Thien.
That's perfect. You sound great.
Okay.
Beat Check is a new podcast where I'll take a closer look at the stories and issues that matter in our region and bring them to you once a week. I'll introduce you to my talented colleagues, and they'll share their latest work.
I think for a lot of Portlanders, this is illustrative of the way they've seen the city change over the last 10 years.
And you'll hear their expertise and analysis. You'll also get to know their personalities.
That's right, man. We both have 2 kids. It's kind of wild.
We'll talk about big issues.
Everything that Uber stood for kind of was how they entered this city.
And big personalities.
I'm a little bit of a Don Juan, but when it comes to subjects, but, they're always in my heart. And, who doesn't love Darcel?
It's going to be fun. Subscribe to Beat Check with the Oregonian anywhere you get your podcast to hear the latest episodes. On this week's show, Michael Russell takes us to Eam, his 2019 Restaurant of the Year. And he talks about some of his top 10 new restaurants in Portland. We also talked about bikes, the latest trends in Portland dining, and how he eats all that food.
My name's Michael Russell. I've been the restaurant reporter, critic guy at the Oregonian for 8 years.
Michael, your job, I think, is one of the more popular ones in the city. People are always looking to read your stuff. How much work do you put into these lists? Because it's a pretty remarkable amount of reporting that you put into it.
Right. So for this year's list, I went out and ate at maybe 60 restaurants over the course of the year to put together my best new restaurants of 2019 list, which came out recently. Sometimes I've done more work than that, and some of it is just in the process of doing my job. I try to check out every new restaurant. I missed, I think, 2 newer places this year, which I try to be very completist with it. But one of them was only open Fridays and Saturdays, like every other week. And the other one had kind of just opened right before the guide came out. So I'll rope them in next year.
How often do you go back to a restaurant? Are you going back to each of these multiple times, or is it only once you get to the process of these are, I think, the top places?
Right. So for the 10 places that ended up on the best new restaurant list, I went back to most of them. Let's say an average of 3 times. I went to some of them 4 times. I went to all of them 2 times except for a really expensive tasting menu place where it's a place called Arizo that specializes in, they call them trash fish, but basically it's sustainable seafood. So they harvest some of it themselves. They get bycatch from fisher people, fish that gets caught inadvertently while they're going after more lucrative catches. And our bill came to something like $430, $450 for 2 people. So it's hard to justify that expense more than once. And I kind of got the picture of a place that has a really noble goal. I didn't even really absolutely love the food, and that was reflected in my review. They came in at number 9 on this year's list. But everywhere else, 2, 3, or 4 times at least.
It seems like a dumb question, but how do you do that? How do you eat? Yeah. How do you eat so much delicious food and go back for more? Is it exhausting, or is it do you have to pace yourself? What's it like?
I think I was sort of lucky in that I was born with a sort of natural voracious appetite, and even going back to before I was a journalist, before I got into food writing, I really could eat a lot, and I had great metabolism. I think as time has gone on, that has sort of worn away. So I'm trying to work out how to how to balance that, because it is like what is the opposite of a calorie deficit? A calorie
surplus.
Surplus. It's a daily calorie surplus every time you go out to eat, because, you go out to a restaurant with your partner or with some friends, maybe you order 4, 5 small things to share. That's kind of the modern way of dining. But I'm probably going to order more like 7, 8, 9 just to sample a wide range of the menu. And then I'm probably going to go somewhere else afterwards. So there might be 2 meals in a night. And I guess the key is just, trying to work out a little bit. I ride my bike everywhere to all my reviews, unless it's totally infeasible. And then, I don't know, going to the gym. I started going to the gym this year, so that's a big change for me.
And you're chasing around a toddler too, so I know how that keeps you busy.
That's right, man. We both have 2 kids. It's kind of wild.
That's a little fact. Hey, we're talking transportation. I am the transportation reporter. You bike around to all your restaurants.
I do.
That's some breaking news here on the pod.
I'm not the only critic that does it. I think Robert Sietsema, he writes for Eater New York. He's definitely a big biker. A guy named Jonathan Kaufman, who just moved here, he did a lot of biking in San Francisco. Soleil Ho, who's the new critic for the SF Chronicle, she rides mass transportation everywhere. So there's a few of us out there, and I think it'd be really hard to do in LA.
Sure.
But even LA, there's, the subway's kind of weirdly convenient. So you'd have to use like Ubers and Lyft.
Right. If you're getting out of Santa Monica or East LA, or, you're covering a lot of territory.
Yeah. I mean, like Jonathan Gold, the famous restaurant critic for the Times, like he was very associated with his like beat up, pickup truck. That was sort of, any profile you read of him would include a mention of this truck, and he would drive all the way out to the San Gabriel Valley looking for, Chinese restaurants or whatever. But I think it actually makes more sense. I moved to Portland in part because I wanted to live in a city where I could bike. So I've kind of kept that up as much as possible.
What's your bike when you ride?
That's a great question. I have 2. I have a speedier all-city steel frame bike, and I have kind of a get around town bike that's made by Linus. It's a 5-speed, or actually an 8-speed, with a basket, and I just installed a kid's seat on the back so I can take my older daughter, up Mount Tabor or whatever. She loves it. She pushes me up the hill, and I feel like in my mind, like, oh, she's actually helping me get up this. I don't think that works in terms of physics, but it actually works.
Let's get your list this year. I mean, this is speaking of bikes, this is on my ride home, your top restaurant of the year. In some ways, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, emblematic of kind of what we're seeing in Portland right now on a couple different levels with some superstars teaming up. Talk about your top pick.
That's right. Now, this year, I decided not to overthink it too much, and I named the restaurant that has been the breakout hit of 2019 as our restaurant of the year, our number 1 restaurant on the guide. It's a place called Eam. They do Thai spiced or Thai flavored barbecue. It's the best barbecue guy in Portland, Matt Vichadomini, and the sort of most important Thai restaurateur in the city of the past 3 or 4 years, Earl Ninsum. They partnered up with a guy named Eric Nelson, who's a sober cocktail savant guy. His cocktails aren't sober. All of them aren't, but right. He is. And so you've got Matt's delicious brisket combined with a curry from Earl and his cooks. Like, it has been, I think Portland really loves smoked meat. That's clear. We've seen that growing in the city, particularly at food carts like Matt's Barbecue, Holy Trinity Barbecue, Bato's, and the one that I'm forgetting right now, Bark City. And then on the other hand, Portland is sort of like, I don't know if it's the Thai food capital of America, because LA has this like pretty established Thai town that, if you go there, as I did once, thinking, I wonder if Portland's the best Thai city in America, you kind of get floored by what's available there, just in terms of, places that open at 8 a.m. with Thai breakfast, that it would be hard to do that here. People have tried and it just didn't fly. So you've got 2 things: Portland's crazy love of Thai food, Portland's growing love of particularly Texas-style smoked meat. It came together, and it's been a hit from day one. There's been lines out the door from day one. Even on Monday night, you might wait 30 minutes, which is pretty rare for Portland.
What about the rest of your list? There's some other big names, right, in Portland restaurants, folks that you've kind of watched for years. rising to the top, starting their own shops.
Yeah. I mean, there's a place called Bullard that's run by a chef named Doug Adams, who is on Top Chef, and he runs this really nice hotel restaurant called Bullard. Again, we're talking about smoked meats here. He's from Texas, so he's sort of taking the things he loved as a kid and elevating them to a really nice looking hotel restaurant. Also opened this year, which I didn't include in this list of restaurants, was Matt's Barbecue Tacos, which is the Matt's Barbecue Taco spinoff that actually recently got named one of the best new restaurants in America by Bon Appetit. I'm kind of more of a stickler for, I don't put carts on my restaurant lists. Right. I mean, it's kind of lame. Maybe it's a little bit like stick in the mud of me, but I just like to have the restaurant list be restaurants for the most part.
Well, he's still represented on the list.
Yeah, he got his due at Eam, no doubt. And actually, I think in terms of just the barbecue, Matt's Barbecue is the best at Prost Beer Garden in North Portland. Matt's Barbecue Tacos is second best, and Eam is actually third. But Matt told me recently that he's about to open a warehouse where he's going to centralize all his barbecue operations. So hopefully that means higher quality across the board and not, more generic medium quality across the board.
So you brought a lot of analysis to your rankings this year and kind of took a step back and said, this is what I'm seeing in the Portland food scene, some trends. So like what jumps out to you in your, you've been doing this for nearly a decade.
We've touched on smoked meat a lot, but that really is a thing going on here. And I think I said in the piece that Portland is now the most interesting or most important barbecue city on the West Coast. I don't think Seattle, LA, SF, or San Diego touches us in terms of the diversity and the quality. Like Matt's and those four carts that I mentioned earlier would be in the top 10 of any city on the West Coast. And then we have places like Eam and Bullard that are, elevating barbecue and doing really interesting things that you're seeing a lot of that in Texas too, but outside of Texas is kind of hard to find. In addition to that, we're actually seeing a lot of interesting movement on the vegan front. Some of that is being led by carts, places like Dinger's Deli that make subs with their own house vegan meat that the sandwiches just taste really good. And I'm a carnivore, but I'm, that's spoken as a carnivore. They're still delicious. There's several places like that. A place called Peri Koshari that does this one bowl, like whole bowl Egyptian street food dish, koshari. It's really delicious. They top it with these caramelized crispy onions that I just love. And then that vegan scene is also translating to some of our most elevated, refined restaurants. There's a place that was our rising star, our number 2 restaurant called Berlou that does occasional vegan nights, and even their regular menu is dairy-free and, a lot of allergen-free. There's also a new place called Fermenter, which is a 4-seat lunch only, 3-day-a-week chef's counter where you go and you pay about $20. I think it's $23 now. And you get this 3-course meal. You can be in and out in 30 minutes. And the chef, Aaron Adams, is kind of like, he's kind of a ham, actually. He's a power lifter. He'll tell you about what music he's listening to. And he just kind of raps with everybody who comes in. And they sell, obviously with 4 seats, and now that they've been reviewed in the Oregonian and a couple other places, like they've gotten a little bit busier, but they also do these bowls to go. So even those 4 seats are booked, you can come and get a pickle on a stick or a grain bowl to go. His food is really good. It feels like hearty and wholesome. And again, this is a place where as a carnivore, I enjoy eating there, and I want to eat there. I want to go back to Fermenter right now.
Sounds good. It's a lot of pickled items there, or no? I mean, what do you mean by fermented?
Well, it's called Fermenter, and that is because he does a lot of fermentation. I think he opened my first meal there. He goes, "I hope you guys like pickled vegetables. I hope you guys like fermented vegetables." And it was like, well, if you didn't, you'd probably be in the wrong place. Right. But you might start with a little veggie salad. Some of it might be pickled or otherwise treated, and then the main course is this insanely good black bean tempeh that they make in house. Like, I think of tempeh, I have this like vision of Pizza A Go-Go on Williams, and I ordered a slice, and it's just this like, that place is closed, by the way. That's an inside joke with me and Andrew.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
on the
Or I don't know what Bella, whatever that place is on Alberta. There's a bunch of like old school Portland pizzerias. They have a vegan slice. It has tempeh, and it's like basically warmed cardboard. That's my opinion of tempeh. I didn't think it could even be good. I know that it has this like historical roots in Indonesia, And there's no reason it couldn't be good because it's just like compressed tofu. But the one they make there, which is made from black beans, that it gets sort of like turned into a cake by the spore. So they incubate it there. They pull it out of the incubator. They cut off a slice. They sear it. And it turns into something like meaty and strange and delicious. It's like eating a steak, as close to eating a steak as you can get. And he serves it on this really nice roasted pepper and tomato sauce with these fermented vegetables. That's your main course. And I was like, wow, I thought I didn't like tempeh up until eating there, and I was totally wrong. So
you can still be surprised every time you go to a new spot, right? I mean, you never know what you're going to get.
I thought walking into that place the first time that I would probably not like it, because I think a lot of vegan restaurants that try to go for something more upscale end up sort of playing dress up, like your daughter putting on, your wife's high heel shoes or whatever. Right. So they want to be nice, and they're trying to recreate the experience of an upscale restaurant, but there's something about it that feels like it's missing something. But this place was so quirky and weird and fun that it really blew me away.
So you've got this repository of knowledge from your Bay Area upbringing, but you also travel and you're plugged into the food scene, nationally as well as you can be without being all places at once. Like Portland had this great run as the Northwest cuisine, right? And salmon, and, I think of places like Wildwood and, that whole Northwest cuisine era. What are we now?
It's interesting. You can kind of like track. I think the James Beard Awards are really an imperfect barometer of anything, because, I mean, all the major national awards go to often go to New York places because that's where the media is mostly, and it is imperfect. But you can kind of look at the wins that Portland has gotten, usually basically head to head against Seattle chefs, and think about that 90s moment where Greg Higgins and at Higgins and Corey Schreiber at Wildwood and Vitaly Paley at Paley's place and Philippe Boulot at the Heathman won Portland's first 4 James Beard Awards as a moment. That was the Alice Waters influence, farm to table, arrives in the Northwest. Chefs with French training come or return to Portland and realize that there's these incredible farms just down the road, and that they can make these great connections where, in the case of Portland, some farmers might even personally drop off their produce at your back door, which is something that we like to pretend that you can do that in Oklahoma City, but right. It's just the nature of Oregon with as many small farms as we have, and the climate where we can grow a lot of stuff, and the urban growth boundary where you only have to drive 20 minutes and you're in farmland sometimes. That all of that adds up to something really, really special. So that's kind of that early phase. And then more recently, we've had a little run again. There was a drought for Portland where Seattle won year after year after year. And then we saw Gabriel Rucker win not just the Northwest Award, but he won a Rising Star Award. Andy Ricker wins a couple of years after that. Naomi Pomeroy won. So we're kind of in another moment where Portland chefs are being recognized. I think we're actually, those awards are lagging like 4 to 6 years behind the moment that they're recognizing. And I do think that the Seattle restaurant scene at the moment is probably a little more interesting than Portland's. There's certainly a lot more money there. So like more ideas are being thrown at the wall, and some of them are sticking and some of them are actually interesting. It's not all just like Jeff Bezos, hobby restaurants. It's like some of them are really cool and great. And I don't know what the future holds for Portland. I think places like Hanok, which is a Korean restaurant that's inside the chef and his wife's home, personal projects like that. Eam obviously speaks to some of the specific people we have here, Earl and Matt and Eric. Canard, which was our restaurant of the year last year, being an all-day cafe from Gabriel Rucker where they're just having a lot of fun. Like these kind of personal, weird, quirky projects, that's where it's at. Unfortunately, a lot of the new spaces that are being opened up in Portland are in new development where the brokers who are listing the places really want existing concepts. They don't want like Starbucks necessarily, or maybe they do. I don't know if they admit it, but they want like the mid-scale, the Salt and Straws of the world. Everybody wants a Salt and Straw or the little boutique independent burger concept, and few people are willing to take a flyer on something like brand new.
Now that we're talking about it, I think one thing that jumps out to me is, historically, maybe in the last decade or so, there have been a lot of like Kurt Huffman places, right, that have been either maybe not on your list, but expanding in the city or creating spin-offs. It seems like there's a new wave of, independent companies, or are these operations backed by some of the restaurant groups that we know?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So both our Restaurant of the Year and our Rising Star are backed by Earl Ninsom, who is a Bangkok-born basketball playing, he was majored in marketing. He comes to America and he's worked in Thai restaurants all around town. And then I think I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he kind of saw what happened at Pok Pok. I know he told me that when he walked in there the first time, he was like, oh, okay, I get it now. And he pretty quickly opened this place, Padi, on Burnside and 28th that, I don't know if he'd like me saying this, but it feels a bit like a Pok Pok, hey, all right, the lines are long at Pok Pok, let's go to Padi. It's like right. Thai street food. Some of the dishes mean a lot to Earl personally, but from there, he's just been on this crazy run. He opens Langban, which is this Thai tasting menu in the back that serves really elevated Thai food. And then more recently, Eam, our Restaurant of the Year, and as well as Berlu, our Rising Star. So that's an incredible run for him. Bullard is... And Hot Yai. Oh my God, I know. And that's hilarious because you could almost look at the Eam Award. I shouldn't even be saying this, but you could almost look at the Eam Award as being a belated love for Matt's Barbecue and Hot Yai. I mean, Matt's Barbecue was a cart of the year 3 years ago, but those have been two of my favorite food world openings of the past 5 years. So they're both great. And then Bullard is backed by, I think they're called Holler Hospitality Group, but that's a woman named Jen Quist, who's the sort of other face behind Bullard and its sister bar, Abigail Hall. And she's up and coming. I hear rumors of a second thing that they're going to do, and we'll see if that pans out. Kurt Huffman, definitely had his finger on the pulse and still does in a lot of ways. He is behind the McKellar Beer edition. He's also involved in the new Kex Icelandic Hostel, which is going to have an Icelandic restaurant or Icelandic Northwest restaurant. He also has moved big time into the beer sphere. Like, he runs this beer bar, Loyal Legion, which has like 99 taps of Oregon beer. It's very popular. Lardo, the sandwich shop, which is his, him and Rick Gencarelli's place. They are secretly one of the best beer bars in the city. If you go to the Lardo in Southeast, they always have an interesting list. They're always doing cool beer pop-ups. They just had this Nashville hot chicken place, Hattie B's, came into town, and they were pouring beer from Nashville, like 6 kegs. Like, not a lot of people can make that happen the way Rick and his team can. Like, I think they have deep roots in the beer scene, both from his time in Vermont and Boston and here now. And they have this crazy happy hour. I think 20-ounce pints are like $3 during happy hour. It's hard to beat.
Well, thanks for taking the time, Mike. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the first episode of Beat Check. Check out Michael's reporting, restaurant reviews, and food rankings at OregonLive.com/dining. Check out my stories on the transportation beat at OregonLive.com/commuting, or follow me on Twitter at Andrew Thien. Until next time.